Imagine being taught two completely different lessons about money while growing up. One lesson says, go to school, get a good job, work hard, and you'll be financially safe. The other lesson says, learn how money works, make money work for you, and you'll be financially free. The fascinating part is that both lessons can come from people who genuinely want the best for you. But the path they lead to can be completely different. This is the powerful idea at the heart of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The story begins with a young boy who grows up listening to two father figures. One is his real father, highly educated, hardworking, and respected in society. The other is his best friend's father, a man who never finished school but eventually became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Robert calls them his poor dad and his rich dad, not to judge them as people, but to show the difference in how they thought about money. His poor dad believed that the key to success was education and a stable job. He encouraged Robert to study hard, get good grades, and work for a reliable company. This advice is familiar to most people because society has repeated it for generations. But his rich dad had a very different belief. He said the biggest problem in the world is that people spend their lives working for money instead of learning how to make money work for them. One of the most important lessons Robert learned from his rich dad was the difference between assets and liabilities. This simple idea is something many adults never fully understand. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. It sounds simple, but many people confuse the two. For example, many people believe their house is their biggest asset. But if that house requires mortgage payments, maintenance costs, property taxes, and bills every month, then it may actually be a liability because it constantly takes money out of your pocket. Rich people focus on acquiring assets that generate income, such as businesses, investments, stocks, or rental properties. Poor and middle-class people often spend their income on liabilities that appear impressive but slowly drain their finances. Another lesson Rich Dad taught was that most people are controlled by two powerful emotions: fear and desire. Fear of not having enough money pushes people to work harder and harder in jobs they don't enjoy. Then desire encourages them to spend their salaries on expensive things to reward themselves. This creates a cycle where people work to earn money, spend that money quickly, and then must return to work again just to pay their bills. Rich Dad called this the rat race. The rat race traps millions of people around the world. They wake up early, rush to work, spend their entire day working for someone else's dream, return home tired, and repeat the same routine every week. At the end of the month, most of their income disappears into expenses, leaving little room for financial freedom. Rich Dad believed the real solution was financial education. Schools teach many important subjects like math, science, and history, but very few teach how money actually works. As a result, many intelligent and hard-working people struggle financially simply because they never learned how to manage money, invest wisely, or build assets. One day, Rich Dad gave Robert and his friend a small job. They worked in one of his stores for very little money. At first, Robert felt frustrated and angry because the pay was so low. But this was exactly the lesson Rich Dad wanted to teach. He explained that if people only work for money, they will always be controlled by it. Instead of asking for a higher salary, he encouraged them to start thinking creatively about opportunities. This lesson changed Robert's mindset forever. Instead of seeing work as just a paycheck, he began seeing work as a chance to learn skills. Rich Dad believed the most valuable thing a person could gain from a job was not money, but knowledge. Skills like communication, sales, leadership, and understanding how businesses operate are far more valuable in the long run than a temporary salary. Another powerful idea from Rich Dad was that the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. When someone invests in assets that produce income, those assets continue generating money even when the person is not actively working. This creates a powerful shift. Instead of trading time for money, people begin building systems that produce money automatically. This is why many wealthy individuals focus on building businesses or investing in assets. They create sources of income that continue flowing long after the initial effort is made. Over time, these income streams grow stronger and eventually provide financial independence. Rich Dad also explained that many people are afraid of making mistakes, especially when it comes to money. Society teaches us to avoid failure at all costs. But in reality, failure is one of the greatest teachers. Every successful investor, entrepreneur, or business owner has experienced setbacks. The difference is that they learn from those experiences instead of giving up. Robert realized that fear of failure keeps many people stuck in safe but limiting financial decisions. They avoid investing, avoid starting businesses, and avoid opportunities because they worry about losing money. But Rich Dad believed that learning how to manage risk is far more powerful than avoiding it entirely. Another lesson that changed Robert's perspective was understanding the difference between working for a company and building ownership. Many people spend decades working hard for a company, helping it grow stronger and more profitable. Yet when they retire, they often depend only on savings or pensions. Meanwhile, the owners of the company continue benefiting from the business long after. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to think like an owner rather than just an employee. Ownership creates long-term wealth because it allows people to benefit from growth, profits, and investments. This shift in thinking is one of the most important differences between people who struggle financially and those who achieve financial freedom. Taxes were another subject Rich Dad discussed openly. He explained that wealthy individuals often understand the rules of the financial system better than others. They learn how businesses, corporations, and investments operate within legal structures that reduce taxes and protect assets. Meanwhile, employees often pay the highest percentage of their income in taxes because they earn money through salaries rather than investments or businesses. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. Instead, it means understanding how the financial system works so you can make smarter decisions. Rich Dad also believed that financial intelligence grows with practice. Just like muscles become stronger with exercise, financial skills improve with experience. Reading books, studying investments, observing businesses, and learning from mentors all contribute to developing this intelligence. One of the most inspiring ideas from the book is that wealth is not only about how much money you earn. It's about how long you can survive financially without working. If your investments and assets generate enough income to cover your expenses, you have achieved true financial freedom. At that point, work becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Robert's journey shows that financial success begins with changing how we think about money. Instead of focusing only on earning more, we must learn how money flows, how assets grow, and how opportunities can be created. Many people spend their entire lives chasing higher salaries but never stop to ask deeper questions about financial independence. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to think differently, to question common advice, and to search for opportunities where others see only problems. In the end, the greatest lesson from Rich Dad Poor Dad is not just about money. It is about mindset. The way we think about money shapes the choices we make every day. When people shift their focus from working for money to building assets and financial intelligence, they begin moving toward a life of freedom. The message is simple but powerful. Financial freedom is not reserved for a lucky few. It begins with education, courage, and the willingness to think differently about money than most people do. And once that shift happens, the path to wealth becomes not just possible, but inevitable for those who continue learning and taking action.